The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon when I first saw him standing by the lakeside, skimming stones across the water's surface, like he had no care in the world. His name was Ayan. There was something about the ease in his stance and the quiet focus in his eyes that made it hard to look away. I had known him for months through mutual friends, but that day, something shifted. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something warmer, deeper, a pull I couldn't ignore. We started spending more time together, often in the quiet hours when no one else was around. There was a comfort in his presence, a silent understanding in our conversations that made it easy to let my guard down. But even as our bond deepened, I noticed he was hiding something. Late-night texts he quickly cleared, unexplained absences, and a distracted air when I asked him simple questions. Still, I kept giving him space, thinking maybe it was just something he needed to work through. One evening, I followed my instinct and asked him directly, "Are you seeing someone else?" He hesitated, then looked away. His silence said more than words ever could. Later, I found out the truth. He had been talking to another boy behind my back. It wasn't just casual, they had been intimate. He had slept with him, not once, but repeatedly. It felt like someone had knocked the air out of my lungs. The betrayal hurt, but strangely, it didn't make me want to walk away. Instead, I felt a strange mix of anger and desire, to reclaim something, to remind him of what we shared, or maybe to prove to myself that I still mattered to him. I suggested we go on a trip, just the two of us, something different, something raw. A hunting excursion, out in the wilderness where there would be no distractions, no secrets. Just us. He agreed, without hesitation. Maybe he sensed my intent, or maybe he just wanted an escape of his own. We packed light and left early, driving toward the forested hills with an old boat tied to the back of the truck. The lake was vast and quiet, surrounded by dense woods and the hum of wildness. When we climbed into the boat and pushed off, it felt like we were drifting away from everything else, our past, our mistakes, our confusion. During the day, we wandered the woods, rifles slung over our shoulders, pretending to care about deer trails and the rustle of movement in the trees. But I wasn't focused on the hunt. I was watching him, his expressions, the way he laughed easily when I joked, the moments when his gaze lingered on mine a little too long. Something was still there between us, no matter how bruised it felt. When night fell, we lit a fire near the edge of the lake. The silence wrapped around us, soft and heavy, broken only by the occasional crackle of burning wood. He sat close, our shoulders brushing, our words slow and low. The tension between us was no longer subtle. It was sharp and undeniable. Without saying much, we moved inside the small tent we'd set up earlier. The space was tight, the air warm with our shared breath. I reached for him first, hesitantly at first, testing the line between forgiveness and desire. He didn't pull away. Instead, he met me halfway, and whatever had been building between us for weeks finally broke loose. Our bodies moved in rhythm. The silence filled with whispered apologies, soft moans, and the desperate need to feel something real again. We didn't sleep much. The night stretched on endlessly, tangled with touches and quiet confessions. There was no need to talk about the boy he'd been with, or the pain I had carried since learning about it. In that moment, all of it faded behind the intensity of our connection, raw and imperfect but undeniable. As the first light of morning began to creep through the fabric of the tent, I watched him sleep beside me, his face soft in sleep, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. I didn't know what would happen when we returned to the real world, but in that quiet, suspended space, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were starting over. The morning air was damp with mist, clinging softly to our skin as we packed up the tent. Ayan moved slowly, deliberately, as if reluctant to break the spell the night had cast over us. Neither of us spoke much. Words felt too fragile, too clumsy for the silence we now shared. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was careful. There was a quiet acknowledgement in the way he handed me my jacket, in the way our eyes met, and then quickly darted away. We had crossed a line, but whether we had found healing or simply fed a deeper hunger remained unspoken. We loaded the gear into the boat and paddled back across the lake, the water still and mirror-like beneath us. The reflection of the trees rippled each time the oars dipped in. Ion sat across from me, his eyes scanning the horizon, but his mind seemed elsewhere. I wondered if he was thinking about the boy he had left behind, or if he was thinking about me. I didn't ask. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. When we reached the other side, the forest felt different. The same path we had taken now felt unfamiliar, slightly menacing, as if the trees had overheard everything and now held judgment. We walked in silence, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves beneath our boots and the occasional bird call in the distance. I was trying to hold on to the sense of connection we had shared the night before, but already I could feel it slipping, like mist through my fingers. Back at the truck, Ion leaned against the door and lit a cigarette. He rarely smoked, only when something was weighing on him. I stood a few feet away, watching the way the smoke curled around his face. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said quietly, not looking at me. "I know," I replied. And I did. But knowing didn't soften the ache. He exhaled slowly, then crushed the cigarette beneath his boot. "It just happened." I was confused. "I'm still confused," I admitted, stepping closer. "But I don't regret what happened last night." His gaze finally met mine, eyes dark with something I couldn't quite read, guilt, maybe, or longing. Neither do I. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it made the air heavier between us. We climbed into the truck and drove in silence, the road winding through hills and empty stretches of countryside. He rested his head against the window, lost in thought. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind spun in circles, trying to make sense of what we were now. Lovers? Friends? Something broken, patched together with one wild night? Back in the city, reality settled back over us like a cold wind. The sounds of traffic, the weight of routine, the pull of separate lives. Ion's phone buzzed multiple times during the drive, each time he ignored it, until finally, on the last ring, he answered. His tone was low, measured. He didn't use names, but I knew who it was. The boy. I focused on the road, pretending not to hear, but each word felt like a thorn in my chest. When he hung up, he didn't explain. I didn't ask. We parked in front of his apartment. He hesitated before getting out. "Can we not talk about this right now?" he asked, voice tired. "Sure," I said. But the silence that followed was louder than any argument could have been. I watched him disappear behind the building's gate, his figure swallowed by shadows. I sat there for a long while, gripping the steering wheel, heart sinking under the weight of unanswered questions. The following days passed in a blur. He didn't call. I didn't text. There was a strange emptiness in my chest, a space where something used to live. Hope, maybe, or certainty. I kept wondering if I had been a comfort, a distraction, or simply a temporary escape for him. The night we shared had felt real to me, but maybe for him, it had just been another mistake. Still, something inside me refused to let go completely. I began to piece together moments in my head, his lingering touches, the way he had looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, how he had reached for my hand in his sleep. Those things couldn't be faked. They were too tender, too human. One evening, as I walked through the park near his building, I spotted him sitting on a bench, alone, staring out at the fountain. I almost turned around, but something stopped me. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised. He gave a small nod, almost like he had been waiting. "I thought about you every day," I said softly, taking a seat beside him. "I know," he whispered, not looking at me. I did too, but I didn't know what to do with it. "Start by being honest." He looked at me, then really looked. "I'm scared of choosing wrong, of hurting someone, of hurting you again." "You already hurt me," I said, not cruelly, just truthfully, but pretending where nothing hurts more. The wind rustled through the leaves above us. He reached out slowly, fingers brushing mine. This time I didn't pull away. We sat there in silence, the kind that wasn't empty, but full of possibility. Something had shifted again, not entirely mended, but not broken either. We weren't whole, but maybe we were becoming. The
Ion
morning
started
air was
showing up
damp
more
with
often,
mist,
unannounced
clinging softly
but
to
never
our skin
unwelcome.
as we
He
packed
would linger
up
at
the
my
tent.
door with an
Ion
awkward
moved
smile,
slowly,
sometimes
deliberately,
carrying takeaway coffee
as if
or a
reluctant to break the
half-eaten
spell
bag
the
of
night
chips,
had cast
like
over
he
us.
needed an excuse
Neither
to be
of
near
us
me.
spoke much.
At first, I
Words
didn't know what
felt
to make
too
of it.
fragile.
We hadn't
Too
labeled
clumsy for the
anything, hadn't
silence we
defined
now
what we
shared.
were, or
It wasn't
what we
uncomfortable,
weren't.
it was
But
careful.
every time he stepped
There was
into
a
my
quiet
apartment,
acknowledgement
he
in the
brought
way
with him
he
a
handed me
strange
my
sense
jacket.
of comfort and
In the
tension.
way our eyes met,
Both
and
coiled
then
tightly
quickly
beneath
darted
his
away.
quiet movements.
We had crossed a line.
We talked about
but whether
ordinary
we had
things,
found healing
music,
or simply
movies,
fed a
the
deeper
weird things we
hunger
saw on the
remained
street.
unspoken.
But the things left
we loaded
unsaid
the gear into
clung
the
to
boat
edges
and paddled
of
back
every
across the
conversation.
lake.
The
The
water
boy he had
still
slept with
and
remained
mirrored
a
like
ghost
beneath
in the
us.
room,
The reflection
unmentioned
of the
but
trees
always
rippled
present.
each time the
I wanted
oars
to ask
dipped
if they
in.
were still in touch.
Ion sat across
but
from me.
I feared the
his
answer
eyes
more
scanning
than
the
the
horizon.
silence.
But his
So I
mind
let it go
seemed elsewhere.
day after day.
I wondered if he was
swallowing
thinking about the
questions
boy he
that
had left
burned in
behind.
my throat.
Or
One night,
if he was thinking
after
about
a quiet
me.
dinner and
I didn't
too much
ask.
wine,
I wasn't
we ended
sure
up
I
on the
wanted to
couch.
know. His
When
head
we reached
resting
the other
against my
side,
shoulder.
the forest
The lights
felt
were
different.
dim.
The
The
same
room
path
washed
we had
in a
taken
gentle
now
amber
felt
hue.
unfamiliar.
I felt his
slightly
breath
menacing,
slow,
as if
steady,
the trees had
syncing with
overheard
mine.
everything and
There was
now
a weight
held
to that
judgment.
moment.
We walked
fragile
in silence
and intimate.
The only
I'm
sounds being
trying,
the crunch of
he
leaves
said
beneath
suddenly,
our boots
voiced
and
barely
the occasional
audible.
bird call in
To
the
figure
distance.
things out. I was
To
trying
be
to
better.
hold on to the sense of
I
connection
turned my
we
head
had
toward
shared the
him.
night before.
Better
but
for who?
already, I
He
could feel it
hesitated.
slipping,
For you.
like mist
For
through my
myself.
fingers.
I don't
Back
know.
at the truck,
I guess
Ion leaned
for
against
us,
the door
if that still
and
means
lit a cigarette.
anything.
He rarely
The
smoked,
vulnerability in his
only
voice
when something was
startled
weighing
me.
on him.
Ion
I
wasn't
stood
the
a
kind
few
to
feet
admit his
away,
fears,
watching the
he
way the
buried
smoke
them under
curled around his
sarcasm
face.
or casual
I didn't mean to
indifference.
hurt you,
But here he
said
was,
quietly, not
quietly
looking at me.
unraveling at
I
the
know,
seams.
I replied.
I could see the boy
and
beneath
I did.
the mask,
but knowing
the one
didn't
who wanted to
soften
be
the
loved
ache.
but didn't
He
know how to ask
exhaled
for it.
slowly. It does
Then
mean
crushed
something,
the cigarette beneath
I
his
said
boot.
gently. It just
But
happened.
you have to decide
I was
if you're ready to
confused.
stop running.
I'm still confused.
He didn't respond right away.
I admitted.
His fingers
stepping
curled
closer.
slightly around
But I
mine.
don't regret
Tentative,
what happened
but
last
deliberate.
night. His
It was
gaze
the closest
finally
he
met
had come
mine.
to choosing.
Eyes dark
The
with
following
something I
weeks
couldn't
felt
quite
like a
read.
slow thaw.
Guilt. We began
Maybe,
spending
or
nights
longing.
together again.
Neither do
Not
I.
always intimate. It should
But
have been
filled with the small
reassuring.
gestures that made
Instead,
me feel seen.
It made the air
In cooking
heavier between
breakfast,
us. Leaving
we
notes
climbed
on my
into the
fridge,
truck and drove
falling
in
asleep
silence.
beside me while
The
watching
road winding
old
through
films.
hills and
There was
empty
laughter
stretches
again,
of countryside.
even if guarded.
He rested his
We
head
were building
against the
something
window,
uncertain,
lost in
but
thought.
real. I kept
Still,
my eyes on the
doubt
road,
lingered,
but my
one
mind
evening,
spun in circles.
I overheard him
trying
on
to
a
make
call
sense of
when
what
he
we were
thought
now.
I was asleep.
Lovers? His voice
Friends?
was hushed, something
Urgent,
broken,
and the tone too
patched
familiar.
together with one
I didn't
wild
catch
night.
much.
Back in
Just
the city,
fragments.
reality
A name I
settled back
recognized,
over us,
followed
like a
by a
cold
long
wind.
pause and a
the
whisper.
sounds of traffic.
I can't
the
talk
weight
right
of
now.
routine. When
The
I
pull of
shifted under the
separate
blanket,
lives.
he ended the call
Ion's phone
quickly,
buzzed
and
multiple
slid back
times
into
during the
bed
drive.
without saying a word.
Each time he ignored
I didn't
it,
confront
until
him.
finally,
Not then.
on the last ring,
Instead,
he answered.
I watched him
His
more
tone
carefully.
was low,
How his
measured.
eyes flickered
He
when
didn't
mine
use
met
names,
his,
but I
how his
knew
phone
who it
was
was.
always face
boy.
down.
I
How
focused
he
on
carried
the road,
an edge of restlessness
pretending not to
he
hear,
couldn't hide.
but each
Something
word
was
felt
still
like
tugging
a
at
thorn
him.
in my chest.
Something
When he
unresolved.
hung up, he didn't
Days
explain,
passed, and
I
the
didn't
unease
ask.
grew heavier.
We parked in front
One
of his
afternoon,
apartment.
as we
He
sat in the
hesitated
park
before
beneath
getting
a
out.
fading sun.
Can we not
I
talk about
asked,
this right now?
Are you still
He
seeing
asked,
him?
voice tired.
He blinked,
Sure.
caught off guard. I said,
No,
but the
he said
silence
too
that
quickly.
followed was
I
louder
mean,
than
I haven't
any
seen him in a
argument
while.
could have been. But
I
you're still
watched him
talking
disappear
to him.
behind the
A
building's
long
gate.
silence stretched
His figure
between us.
swallowed by shadows.
He looked down at his hands.
I sat there
then
for a
nodded
long
slowly,
while,
gripping the
Sometimes
steering wheel.
It's not like
heart
that
sinking
anymore,
under
I
the weight
swear.
of unanswered
I
questions.
stood up,
The
heart
following
pounding.
days passed.
Then
in a
what is
blur.
it like?
He didn't call
Because you're here with
I
me.
didn't text.
Building
There was
something,
a strange
pretending
emptiness
we're
in my
okay.
chest,
But you're
a
still
space
holding
where
on to
something
him.
used to live.
Why?
Hope.
He didn't answer.
Maybe or certainty.
Maybe he didn't know how
I
to.
kept wondering
or
if I had
maybe
been a
he didn't
comfort,
want to face the
a
answer
distraction.
either.
I
Or
can't be your
simply a
temporary
temporary
escape
Sion.
for him. I said
The
quietly.
night we shared
I
had
won't
felt
be a
real to
placeholder
me.
while you figure
But
out what
maybe
you
for
really
him,
want. It had
just
just been
been
another
me.
mistake.
Eyes glassy,
Still,
with
something
something
between
inside inside me
regret and
refused to
confusion.
let go completely.
You're not.
I began to
just-
piece together
I'm
moments in
scared
my
I'll
head.
mess this up.
His lingering
I don't
touches,
trust myself not
the way
to.
he had looked at me
Then
when
maybe
he thought
you don't
I wasn't
deserve this.
watching.
I
How
said,
he had reached for my
stepping
hand in
back.
his sleep. I walked
Those
away.
things couldn't be fate.
Each step heavier
They were
than the
too
last.
tender.
It
too
wasn't
human.
anger that filled
One
me.
evening,
It
as
was
I
sorrow.
walked through the park near
because
his
I had
building,
let myself
I
believe
spotted
in
him
something
sitting on a
fragile.
bench.
I had hoped he would choose me
staring
with
out at the
certainty,
fountain.
with both
I almost
hands
turned
and
around,
no hesitation.
but something
But
stopped
love
me.
shouldn't feel
When he
like
saw
waiting
me,
for
he
someone
didn't
to
look
let go
surprised.
of someone else.
He gave a small
That
nod.
night, he didn't call,
Almost like he
and
had been
neither
waiting.
did I.
I thought
The
about you
distance grew,
every day,
like a
I
fog
said
settling
softly,
between us.
taking a seat
I
beside
threw
him.
myself into work,
I know,
into friends, into
he whispered,
anything that
not
didn't
looking at
remind
me.
me of him.
I did too,
But it was impossible
but I
to
didn't know what
forget.
to do with it.
Every corner
Start
of my
by being
life
honest.
still echoed
He
with
looked
his
at me, then
presence,
really
his laugh,
looked,
his
I'm
scent on
scared
my sheets,
of
his
choosing
voice in my
wrong.
head.
2
Of
weeks
hurting
later,
someone.
I came
of hurting
home
you
to
again.
find a note tucked beneath
You
my
already
door.
hurt me. His
I
handwriting,
said,
shaky
not
but
cruelly,
familiar.
just truthfully.
I let fear make
but
my
pretending
choices.
where nothing hurts
But
more.
I'm not afraid anymore.
The wind rustled
I don't
want
want
to
to keep
leaves
running
above us.
Not from
He
you.
reached out slowly,
If there's still a way
fingers
back,
brushing
I'll be
mine.
waiting.
This
Tell
time
me where
I didn't
to
pull
meet you.
away. I
We
read
sat
it
there
3
in silence
times before I
the
could
kind
breathe
that
again.
wasn't empty.
Something in
but
me
full
stirred,
of possibility.
uncertain,
Something had
cautious,
shifted again,
but alive.
not entirely
I
mended,
folded
but
the note
not broken
slowly,
either.
holding it
We weren't
tightly in
whole,
my palm.
but maybe
it
we were
wasn't
becoming.
an answer, but it was a beginning. The
The
California
California
air
air
was
showing up
first
more
met
often.
was nearly
Unannounced
announced when I
softly
walked
to our
never
skin.
unwelcome.
Light rained
As we
tap
gently
gently at my
against the
door with
windows.
an awkward
Ion moved
smile.
slowly,
Of freshly
sometimes
ground
carrying
coffee
takeaway
as
cards
if
or a
reluctant to break the
Ion
spell the
was
night
already
had
there,
passed
like
over
he
us.
needed
Seated
an
at a
excuse
corner
to
to
hear
hear
me.
me.
Spoke much.
His fingers
At first,
curled
I
around
didn't
the
know what
love
to make
he
of
hadn't
him.
touched.
We hadn't
Too
labeled
plugged up with
anything.
his
He hadn't
silence,
defined
now
what we
shared.
were.
Expression
Or
it
wasn't
what we weren't,
uncomfortable.
like it was
Every
everything
time
he
he
stepped
stepped
into
into
my
my
apartment,
acknowledgement,
he
he
brought
brought
with him a
handed
I
me
sat
my
across
jacket.
from him
And
without
the
a
way our
word.
eyes met,
Both
for a
coiled
moment,
tightly
quickly
beneath
neither
the
of us
quiet
spoke.
movements.
We had
The
crossed the
silence
line.
talked
Didn't
about
feel
like
like
whether
before.
we had found healing
It wasn't
or
like
movie
simply
sped,
said,
the
or
weird things we
hunger
saw in the
remained
streets
unspoken.
deliberate.
But the things
like
left
both of us
us
sat here
needed
in
to
remember
edges,
paddled
how
back
to be in
across
the
the
same
lane.
space
The
without
boy
the
he had
still
slept with
everything
remained
like
like
ghost
ghost
in
in
the
the
room.
room.
There
I
was
didn't
mention
mention
of
of
the
the
trees
trees
rippling
finally
each
said
time
I wanted to
voices
ask if they were
dipped
still
in.
in
I
touch.
almost sat across
I
from me.
replied.
Feared the
His
answer.
eyes
Your
stared
note
in
didn't
the
feel like
horizon.
something I could
But so I let
mind
it go.
seemed
He
elsewhere.
nodded day after day.
I wondered if he was following
about the
questions
boy he had
that
left
burned
behind.
in my throat.
Every
One
word.
night,
If he was
I
thinking
just
about
didn't know
it,
if he'd
dinner,
still
I
want
didn't
too
ask.
much wine. I wasn't
I
sure
watched
I
him
wanted to know.
closely.
His
Looking
head
we
was
reached
cracked
the other
against my
side.
shoulder.
The
The lights were
for
dim.
rehearsed
The
sincerity.
same path
We
but
had taken
what I
gentle
saw
amber
instead
hue,
was
familiar,
something I felt
unfamiliar,
slightly
breath,
menacing.
slow, humility.
As the trees had
The walls
sinking
were
heard
usually
everything,
carried,
and
there was
now
a weight
held
to that
judgment.
moment.
Replaced by the
We
raw
walked in
fragility
silence,
of an
intimate.
The only sound between
Unwine.
the crunch of
Not
leaves
to
and
lose
suddenly
what mattered
voice
most.
barely
Occasional
audible. I
bird
want to
call
understand.
and
Figure
distance.
things out.
I said
was
to
trying
be
to
better.
hold on to the sense
What
of
changed?
connection
I turned my
he
head
had
toward
shared
him
the
the night
Ion leaned
before.
back
Better
but
for you.
already. His
I
eyes
hesitated
hesitated
the window before
for
returning to
mist
mine.
for
My
myself.
fingers.
I kept holding
I
on
don't
at
know.
the truck because
I
I
guess
thought I
I
owed
owed
him
him
something.
door
That still
and
means
lit a
we
cigarette.
shared something
He
intense.
rarely
The
smoked,
vulnerability
but
never
his
only
voice
when something was
startled
weighing
me.
on him.
Pieces of
Ion
me.
wasn't the
I stood
kind
a
who
few
knew
feet
how to
away.
give. Watching the
He
way they
carried them
giving
under
his sarcasm
sarcasm
was
familiar.
casual
I didn't
and
mean to
different.
hurt
It was
you,
wrong.
but here he
He
was
said quietly,
he
not
politely
looking at me, letting the
I
words
know.
settle. I replied,
But I could see the
you,
boy
and I
beneath
did.
the mask.
But
It was
no one
different
who
from
wanted to be
starting.
loved, but
You
didn't
see,
know
I
how to ask
exhaled
for it.
slowly.
You
It
asked
does
for
mean
honesty,
something.
the cigarette
presence
beneath
I
his
said
for
gently.
real things.
It just
But-
happened.
and I
You
was
have to terrified
terrified
I
I'd
refused.
refused. Stop running.
So
I'm
I
still
created
confused.
you.
He didn't respond right away.
I
Thinking I could
his fingers
protect him
curled
closer.
slightly
But
around
all I
mine.
did was
Don't
hurt you
regret
anyway.
what happened
But
last
deliberate.
night.
I let out a
His gaze
breath, the closest
finally
he
met
had
mine.
realized I was holding.
Eyes dark
The
with
following
something
night
hurt
felt
me.
like a slow thaw.
I know.
Guilt. We
He
began
said quickly,
spending
or
nights
long
together
I'll carry
again.
that.
Neither do
Not
I.
always
I don't want to
intimate.
make
It
excuses
should have been
anymore.
reassuring.
Small gestures
I wanted to try,
instead
even if
feel
it's
seen.
messy.
It made the air
And
heavier
even if I
between
don't
us.
always get it
Leaving
right.
notes
We
on
climbed
my
into the
fridge
truck
and
simplicity
drove
of his
inside
words
beside me
moved
while
the
watching
road
winding
film
through hills.
no
There was
dramatic
laughter
laughter
again.
sweeping
Promises.
even if guarded.
He rested
Just
his
we were
head
building
and willing
something
things
to
to
certain.
change. Lost in
But
thought.
it wasn't perfect.
I
but
kept
still,
my
maybe
eyes on the
perfection
road.
had never been
my
one
mind
evening.
spun in
We
circles.
were overheard
many
to make sense of what we
complicated
thought.
people
I was
navigating the
lovers,
wreckage
his
of our
voice
own
was
choices.
hushed,
Something
maybe
broken,
that's
and
what
the
made
tone
this
too
two
familiar.
together with one
I didn't
wild
look down
match.
at the table.
Back in
Just
the
fingers
segments,
brushing
reality
the edge
settled
like
back
knives
over us.
I don't need
you
you
to
to
be
be
perfect
perfect.
and a
The
whisper.
sounds
I
of
just need
traffic.
you
I
to be
can't talk
consistent
right
of
now.
routine.
I need to
When I
know that
folded
we're
under the
separate
blanket,
lives.
he
You
ended
might
up
already
slowly
be buzzwords
and
multiple
slid back in
times
bed.
during the
He
drive.
nodded
saying a
slowly.
word. Each time he
I
ignored
didn't
it
confront
until
him.
finally,
I promise.
not
On the
then.
last ring,
There was still a
he
part of
answered.
me
I
that
watched
didn't
him
fully
fully
trust
tone
him.
was low.
A part
His
of eyes
eyes flickered.
He didn't use
Mine
names,
cautious,
but I
his
knew who
tone
it
was
was.
always
But there was
faithful.
also something
I
stronger
focused
than
on
an
an
edge of
pretending not to
steady
hear
and
him,
flickering.
but each
Something
word
first
felt
like
like
tugging
a
at
thorn
him
in my
storm.
chest.
Something
We left the
unresolved.
cafe together.
He didn't
Days
explain.
passed.
Walking side
I didn't
by
ask
side through the
heavy.
We parked in front
One
of his
afternoon,
apartment. Hand brushed
as we
against
sat
my
in the
hesitated
park,
before
and
getting
this
out.
time, son,
I didn't
can we not
hesitate.
talk about
this right now.
I let
Are
my
you still
fingers
seeing
find
him?
voice tired.
He
The
blinked.
city around us
Sure.
felt different.
I said,
no,
not brighter.
but the
He said
silence
too
that
quick.
somehow
Followed was
cleared
louder
louder
than
than
I haven't
any
seen him in a
delusion
while.
could have been.
We didn't
But
speak.
I
We
watched
watched
him
him
disappear.
disappear behind the
A
building.
long
Silence
silence
felt
stretched
full now.
figures
Figures
swallowed
swallowed
by
by
shadows.
shadows.
Looking down at
his
his
hand.
hand.
I sat there
Then
for a
nodded
long
the
while.
door to my building.
Sometimes
Sometimes
steering
and
wheel.
turned to face
It's not
me.
like that
Heart
anymore.
sinking
Can I come
under the
in?
weight of
He asked.
unanswered
I
questions.
stood
Not
up.
demanding.
The following days passed.
Then what is it
blur
like?
eyes. He didn't
Because
call me
you're
if you're
here
ready
with
to
me.
stay.
I didn't text.
Buildings
There was a
resting,
strange
hot, pretending
emptiness
we're
in my
okay.
chest.
Then he
But you're
nodded.
still holding on
Something
I am.
used to live.
Why?
Upstairs.
He didn't answer.
Maybe
Everything
or
felt
maybe he didn't know
know how
I
to.
kept wondering
Or
if that had to
maybe
be
he
part
didn't
of
want to
like
face the
someone
instruction.
returning to a place
I
they
can't
once
be your
knew
secretary
but
set
now
for him.
saw
I
differently.
said
The night we
quietly.
shared,
I won't be a
walk
placeholder
around,
while you figure
touching
out what
the
you
edges
really
of his
want.
hands.
His
It had
movements
just another
slowly,
mistake.
more
Eyes
intentional.
glassy. I
With
missed
something
between
inside
my
me
breath.
refused
I stepped
to
closer.
let go completely.
You're not.
My voice low.
I began to piece together moments in my head.
He reached for
His
me then.
lingering
I don't
touch
trust
and
myself.
the
Not
way
to.
he had looked at me,
no
and
urgency,
maybe don't deserve
no
that.
desperation. Just
how
how
he had
reached for my hand.
deliberate
Closeness.
I walked
Those
away.
things stood there in the
Each
living
step
room.
heavier
They were
than
too
the last.
tender.
Wrapped around each
It
other.
wasn't
And
anger
for
that
the
filled
first
me
time in a
evening.
long while,
It was
as I walked
sorrow.
through
It
the
didn't
park
feel like
because
we
I
were
had
trying
let
to fix
myself
something.
believe
I spotted him
in
sitting
something
on the
fresh.
bench. We were
I
finally
hoped
starting
he would
from where we
choose
staring
to
out
with
at the
certainty.
fountain.
Without
With both
pretending
hands
to
turned
turn
around,
around.
no hesitation.
But
Something
later that
that
night,
love shouldn't
as we
feel
lay
like
together,
for
he
someone
didn't
to
let
let
go
go
of
of
our
someone
bodies
else.
He gave a
But
small
that
night.
night,
He didn't call.
almost
I
like
asked him
him
what he
neither
wanted
did
now.
I.
I
He
thought
didn't
about
pause
you
the ground.
every day,
like a
you.
fog
I said
settling
only
between
you,
us.
taking a seat
It wasn't my
beside him.
declaration to work.
I know
It was a
friends,
decision.
into
He whispered.
anything that
And
not
for
for now.
now,
That was enough. I did too.
But it was impossible
But I
to
didn't know what to
forget.
do with it.
Every corner
Start
of my
by being
life
honest.
still echoed
He
with
looked
his
at me, then
presence,
really
his laugh,
looked.
his
I'm
scent on my
scared
sheets,
of
his voice in
choosing
my
wrong.
head.
2
Of
weeks
hurting
later,
someone.
I came
hurting you
home
again.
to find a note tucked beneath
You
my
already
door.
hurt me.
His
I
handwriting,
said,
shaky
not
but
cruelly,
familiar.
just truthfully.
I let fear make
but
my
pretending
choices.
where nothing hurts
But
more.
I'm not afraid anymore.
The wind rustled
I don't
through
want
the
to keep
leaves
running
above us.
Not from
He
you.
reached out slowly,
If there's still a way
fingers
back,
brushing
I'll be
mine.
waiting.
This
Tell
time
me where
I didn't
to
pull
meet you.
away.
I
We
read
sat
it
there
3
in
times
silence,
before I
the
could
kind
breathe
that
again.
wasn't empty,
Something in
but
me
full
stirred,
of possibility.
uncertain, something had
Cautious,
shifted again,
but alive.
not entirely
I
mended,
folded the
but
note
not broken
slowly,
either,
holding it
we weren't
tightly in
whole,
my palm.
But maybe
It
we were
wasn't an
becoming.
answer,
But it was a beginning.